Hey there, and welcome to my oneer about Spider-Man Brand New Day. I really am excited to talk about this movie. I saw it a little over a week ago at this point, and I've listened to a lot of podcasts talking about it, and I think I have where I stand on this movie settled at this point, so I'm ready to talk about it. Our friends over at IMDb have this as a forgotten Peter Parker lives alone as a full-time Spider-Man until mounting pressure triggers a dangerous change and a powerful new enemy emerges. It was written by Chris McKenna, Eric Summers, Stan Lee, and it was directed by Destin Daniel Cretton. So over on Letterboxd, my review is 3.5 stars with a heart. I think this movie feels a bit overstuffed. There's a lot of characters in it. And I think the only reason that we are introducing one of them is so that way we can make a future franchise. It's fun to see the team up aspects that you see in the trailer between him and Frank Castle and the emotional weight for him and MJ and Ned. Amy was with me when I saw this. So every once in a while I would ask her to review a movie, and her review is 3.5 stars. A good continuation of the story. I liked it because of that. So I've put out an instant reaction that's up on TikTok and YouTube. And I'm pretty sure this is where I'm at with this movie. I think this movie's good. I had a good time with it. I think part of the problem with this movie is that I am surprised by some of the details they decided to go with, even though I think it made it visually appealing. It's complicated. So the examples I would start with is I think like the damage control feels like they've become a bigger part of this world than they were before. And also they're now starting to do things like have, superhuman specific retaliation and suppression techniques. And that feels a little strange at this point, but I guess it's necessary. We didn't really end up there before that I was aware of. The only thing we had was the Hulkbuster armor that Iron Man had made. But I think that portion of the movie feels strange. I do like, so we're going to go spoilers here. I haven't done that in a while, but I think I have to in order to be able to have this conversation. Sadie Sink casting as Jean Grey and us watching Jean Grey's powers escalate throughout the movie is really good, but it's also canonically not part of the comic book space. So it feels a little shoehorned in for those of us who've read a lot of comics. That was my illusion in my review, is that it felt like we were just doing this in order to create a future franchise. But the more I think about it, we get a little bit of the progression of Tom Holland's Spider-Man, where he is getting a chance to be a little bit of a mentor and sort of, emulate me kind of personality type at this point, where he doesn't really have anybody who's doing that for him anymore. Right. So first we had Iron Man, and, we had Aunt May, and he's always had these people that are sort of looking out for him and helping him grow. And he's now on his own, and he's been doing this for a while, and he meets someone who is hurting, who is powerful, and is in the point where they're discovering their powers. And it feels a little bit like we've flipped him from like the mentee to the mentor. And I think that's actually one of the reasons why I've been reevaluating this movie. I think in this movie, we don't have Frank Castle as sort of mentor. What we have is like Frank Castle as like sibling or like compatriot. And I think that's really well done. I think it's one of my favorite versions of Punisher that we've had played so far. I think it is right in line with Spider-Man's ecosystem of characters. I think he's really fun. Jon Bernthal plays Frank Castle, and that version of the Punisher in some of these Marvel adaptations have been really gruff and grim. There's a one shot on Disney Plus called I forget, Punisher Last Kill or something like that. And he may kill 40 or 50 people in that. In this movie, he's shooting a lot, but we don't see an awful lot of deaths. And, we get the sort of bantery back and forth between him and Spider-Man. I really like it. It's just a little bit different than the Marvel's Punisher we've had before. Even the Punisher that we had in, Daredevil, He's a little gruffer, a little harder, a little less PG-13, and a little more R is the way I would put it. And we get some fun Frankisms throughout the movie, and we get the illusion of the fact that he's lost his family and something happened in Staten Island that Peter saved him, air quotes, saved him. But it's really fun to see that. So I've been reevaluating this movie after my initial watch. I still think I'm right around 3.5 or so stars. I think it could be almost 4, but I don't think it crosses that threshold. I'm about to release a Letterboxd definition for how I use Letterboxd, and you'll get it more when you see that. I think 4 basically means you're on the precipice of of greatness, and I don't know that I would say that about this movie. I would say this is a really good popcorn movie that's probably going to make the most money of any movie this year. And I think it's fun, and I think it has, some of the craziest 4-quadrant that Marvel has been able to make in a long time. But I do think this movie is not great. I think the introduction of Sadie Sink as Jane Grey is complicated, is the way I would put it. I am really glad that they've cast her. I think she's a good choice. I think the fact that we have her powers on display in ways that are non-obvious, especially for people who aren't super steeped in what she can do. I think there's a really interesting aspect of the fact that, it's for someone who has no idea, this would be like, oh, it's just a character named Jean Grey. So you don't need the backstory. You don't need to know everything about who she is. And I think that's pretty cool. And I think it just works as is. I think having Bruce Banner in this movie is a fun way to allow us to see Savage Hulk, where he sort of grows beyond where Smart Hulk was, and he's bigger and stronger. And there's still a little bit of hesitance in that character, even, near the end when he decides to let go and fall instead of keep fighting. I'm confused as to how we got here. I felt like the last time we saw Bruce Banner, he was Smart Hulk and everybody was chill. He was cool. And it's interesting that he's teaching at the university in New York City. There's lots of things going on here. It just feels like a lot of convenience. I think that the scene that really is one of the best in the whole movie is when Zendaya's MJ is saved by Peter and is swinging across the city and doesn't seem fazed by it and is pretty okay with it. And then you realize after she kisses him or he kisses her that it's actually Jean Grey has control over MJ. And it's powerful and it's moving and it's tough. And the things Jean says really are borderline villain. Like, there's not one memory of you inside of here is pretty rough. And he's just been pining for his friends and his girlfriend. And it's just it's well done. I do think it feels a little convenient to have this happening. And I think the ending of the movie is interesting because you have sort of this weird storyline where Frank ends up being able to shoot a bullet, I don't know, 1.5 miles and hit Peter. And it creates this weird situation where Jean is trying to keep him alive by keeping his blood in his body. And you get a slow-mo movement of Frank carrying Peter. And I think it's effective, but it feels a lot like it's just playing your heartstrings. And even at the end, you have Frank Castle sitting there at his bedside and he lets Peter leave as just a guy and he puts on the Spider-Man mask. And finally Peter gets a chance to see that the city is behind him. And I think that's an aspect of Tom Holland Spider-Man that we've never had before. Like, every other Spider-Man has had a scene where New York had Peter's back. And I think it's really cool to finally give him that, but it seems a little weird to have Frank be the guy. And it also feels really convenient. We've seen this done in a lot of comic books where somebody acts as though they're Daredevil so Matt Murdock can go in as a lawyer. So it just felt a little easy for me. I will say the action in this movie is phenomenal. I'm really confused as to how the hand ended up working for damage control. Just weird that there are ninjas working for this government agency. Yeah, they just needed a firm hand. It's weird. Again, feels easy, creates a very cool fight scene between Peter and the Hand. I think it's phenomenal. It looks so good, but it's real hard to just look the other way and be like, well, they're there. This feels a little bit like back in the day, I had this conversation with somebody and they were like, you complain about everything. And I was like, so there are some movies that you go and you buy a big bucket of popcorn and you turn off your logic and brain when you go in and enjoy the spectacle. And I think a lot of people, this movie will do that for them. I'm pretty steeped in Spider-Man's lore and MCU lore. So to me, it's a little more than just a big popcorn movie because it means a lot to me. And I feel like this movie did a really good job of making it accessible for everyone, but in little ways, it seems to be losing the diehards. So in another world, if this movie was a little bit slightly different and there was a little bit more going on, it could have been a 4.5 star movie. But where it sits today, in my opinion, is 3.5 stars, which is a good movie. And is, in this case, the award is the money. This is going to be $1 billion grosser. It's crazy how much money this movie's going to make. It might make $1 billion domestically. I enjoyed my time with it. I look forward to it being on Disney Plus so I can watch it again. I don't know that I'm going to buy this as a 4K Blu-ray. I don't usually buy Marvel titles, but I had fun. If you haven't seen it, go see it. Go see it in a big screen. Go see it with good sound. It's worth it. If you can just turn your brain off and let this wash over you, you may walk out and be like, this is the best film of the year. I just wasn't there. And I think I'm good and I'm going to let it sit there. I look forward to seeing what comes out of this. I'm always happy to see Peter Parker on the screen. I think Tom Holland has finally surpassed the legacy of the other Spider-Men, like even Andrew Garfield, who I'm a huge fan of and I think is a great actor. And I think, the Tobey Maguire-ness of sort of a modern take on Spider-Man. Tom owns this. He's now been in four Spider-Man movies and 7 or 8 Marvel movies total. And he's been in it for over 10 years. And I think this just means he's our Spider-Man until hopefully we get Miles and Miles becomes the Spider-Man for the next generation. Hopefully we find somebody who can inhabit that role as well as Tom Holland has inhabited Peter Parker. Okay, I am going to stop there because I want to get this out before I go tonight to see Teenage Death and Sex at Camp Miasma. So this is on my plate. And I wanted to make sure it was done. I'm going to try to get it out today, otherwise tomorrow morning. And then later this week, I will have a review of Teenage Death and Sex at Camp Miasma. Joan Schonenberg joint. I am so excited. All right, I will talk to you all soon. Bye-bye. Go to movies, rate, review, follow me all over the place. GeekOnFilm.com, Robbie the Geek, Letterboxd, YouTube, TikTok. Find me. Peace.